Today we're looking at the TerraMaster D5 Hybrid. Now this is a DAS, not a NAS, so it's direct attached storage, not network attached storage, which means this needs to connect directly to your computer, not to your network. Does this have a place on your desk? Is this a good solution for Macs that have limited storage? Let's take a look and find out. So this is what it looks like. It is plastic. It's not too big. It does not feel cheap in any way. Sorry about the autofocus there. Now, if we'll look on the back, there's some interesting choices. You've got your power connection, and you've got your USB-C connection, a 3.2 USB-C connection. This is your dial that you can set hardware RAID, reset button, and of course the power button. It does have a pretty good size fan and does keep it well ventilated. Now it is a D5, which indicates 5 bays. So let's take a look at that. Here we see 2 bays, which are easy to get out. Push in the top, pull out the bottom, and the tray slides right out. And you can mount a 3.5-inch drive or a 2.5-inch drive. And it doesn't take any tools. It just snaps in with the side rails. Snap it back in. And again, D5 hybrid. Well, where are the other 3 bays? Why is it called a hybrid? Well, let's find out. So, on the side here, that's where your other 3 bays are. So let's go ahead and slide off this side panel. And to do that, we just have to remove a couple of screws. One up here and one over here. These are just Phillips head screws. So I'm going to use my trusty LTT screwdriver from lttstore.com. And once we get these off, we'll go ahead and put it back on its side. And we just slide this top panel off our side panel. Give it a little push. And there you go. And there are 3 M.2 NVMe slots, which I've already filled, and I did add some cooling fins just to keep the temperature down, as there was room in the case. So now let's go ahead and get this back together. Just slide it right back in, and then we just need to put those screws back in. Once again, LTT screwdriver, lttstore.com. Highly recommend it. It really is a great screwdriver and well worth the price. Okay, we'll turn it over. Since I do have the front drives out, let's just take a look at that. One thing you want to do when you're putting it back in is you want to be sure that you put it in the correct way. There's a look inside the drive bay with the backplane. Just slide it right in, and it will just snap right in there. You go ahead and get the other one. Again, make sure you've got it turned the right way. Where it says TerraMaster on it, that's going to be on the bottom. And just slide that in there. Snaps in, and that's it. Now where it says TerraMaster, those are actually vents, and it is on both sides. You do have the instructions on how to set a hardware RAID on one side as well. Those are your instructions right there. I chose not to use the hardware RAID, which we'll get into a little bit later in the video. So now let's see about getting this set up. I'm going to go ahead and connect this to my MacBook Pro, which is mounted under my desk. So first I'm connecting the power and then the USB-C. Again, it's not Thunderbolt, which is a bit irritating, but I'm going to go ahead and slide it back into position. And it is right next to my Synology 2-bay NAS. Now you'll notice the lights there. It's not on. Once you power it on, you're going to get an amber light. And once those turn green, your drives are ready to go. They are very tiny lights, which I do wish they were a little bigger. And there it goes. Green flashing lights, the drive is ready. So before we go any further, take a look at this. Have you guys ever opened your car door and it just stinks? Maybe there was fast food, maybe you've got a baby, maybe you weren't feeling good and kind of stunk up the car. Well, take a look at this. Ivy Bloom Car Freshies. They are on Facebook. They have some incredible air fresheners for cars. Let's take a look. Many different options for the holidays. Pretty cool. This is the Facebook site, so if you want to go to Ivy Bloom on Facebook, that would be great. This is one of the freshies. Another pretty cool freshie. For those of you that like Hello Kitty. And how about that for Halloween? I think this one's pretty cool. And this. Freshies are currently available in several different scents: mahogany teakwood, champagne toast, black ice, leather, strawberry pound cake, Caribbean escape, pumpkin spice, and Jolly Rancher. Look them up on Facebook, Ivy Bloom Car Freshies. Let's get back to the video. Okay, so now we need to open Disk Utility so we can format the drives that we just hooked up. So let's go ahead and get to that. Now, this looks awfully busy because I have some other things on here. What we're going to focus on, though, not the internal and not these disk images down here. This is a different disk. This is not one that we just did. This is also a different one that I have, as is this one. So what we're going to work on is Team TM8, Team TM8, Team TM8, TerraMaster TDOS, TerraMaster TDOS. Since we know we put 3 NVMe drives in there, that's this one, and this one. And 2 hard drives with spinning disks, that's this one and this one. So we need to format these. So what you're going to want to do, go ahead and select this first one. And I had actually formatted this one already, but we'll go through the process of what you need to do. Click on Erase. Give it a title. My NVMe drives were just from a company called Team Group, which they're not expensive, and I do highly recommend them. I've had great luck with them. So since they're from Team Group, I'm just going to call this one T1. You have the options of the style of format that you want to use. If you're using a modern Mac, you're going to want to use APFS. You do have the option of APFS encrypted, case-sensitive encrypted. These, they simply mean what they say. This one, you're going to have a password. This one, you don't have a password, but it's case-sensitive. This one is case-sensitive, and you need a password. If you have an older Mac, then you can look at extended journaled or extended journaled case-sensitive. If you're going to be using these with a Windows PC, then you're going to be looking at MS-DOSFAT or exFAT. Fun fact, MS-DOSFAT stands for Microsoft Disk Operating System File Allocation Table. exFAT is Extended File Allocation Table. MS-DOSFAT has a ceiling on the size drives that it can see. exFAT allows you to have larger drives. Offhand, I can't remember what that number is, but if you are going to be using this on a Windows PC, I would just recommend using exFAT to be on the safe side. Again, I'm using a MacBook, so I'm going to go with APFS, which is designed for more modern drives like SSDs. So selecting that. Now, you also have these options down here. I would just recommend going with the GUID partition map. If you are looking at going into something with Windows, you might need to look at the master boot record, but GUID partition map should work fine for you. Why am I not choosing the Apple partition map? Never have needed it. Just stick with GUID partition map, and you're good to go. Select that, hit erase, let it do its thing. It's done, and now you can see it over here, T1. Now we need to do that with the others as well. Next, NVMe, erase, calling it T2, APFS, GUID partition map, let it fly. It's done, and you can see that it's added over here. One more to go. Erase. T3, still APFS, good partition map. But I named it wrong. So we can just come back in here and change this T3. And there we go. So now we need to see about doing that with our larger hard drives. Let's go to the first one. It's going to be pretty much the same process. It's 10 terabytes, select erase. And let's say this one, I'm going to call it TM1. Again, APFS, GUID partition map, erase. This is a larger drive and it's a spinning disk, so it does take a little bit longer. And there we go. That one's done. And you can see TM1 right over here. Now we need to go to the next one. Same process. Select erase. TM2. And of course you can name these whatever you want. I'm just doing this for right now so I know which disks are which when we go to set up our RAID. Still APFS, GUID partition map, and erase. And there we go. It's done. And there's TM2 over here on the side. Now, let's go ahead and close these just to make it look a little neater. Now what we want to do is create our RAIDs. Disk Utility has built-in RAID functions. It's not the most robust, but it does give you some options. And it comes with the operating system, so why not use it? Go to File, RAID Assistant. Now, these are the only three options you have. Striped RAID, which splits the data across a couple of drives or however many number of drives that you set up, but there's no parity. One goes down, you lose it all. You have Mirrored RAID 1, which cuts your total amount of storage in half. We had two 10 terabyte disks. If we put them into RAID 1, we will have 10 terabytes to use because the data will be written to both, allowing the potential failure of one disk and still holding on to your data. So you can replace the one failed disk and then rebuild the RAID to again have the parity. Or you can go to JBOD, which is just a bunch of disks. What that will do is whatever total number of disks you put in there and their total amount of storage, it combines it all. There is no redundancy, so you got to keep that in mind. So the first thing that we want to do, we're going to create a RAID 1 for our two 10 terabyte hard disks. So got that selected, click Next, and this is where you've got to be sure you select the correct disks. If you select the wrong disks, I'm not responsible for that. You're responsible for knowing what disks you have. I know that the two hard disks are the TerraMaster ones. I'm selecting those. Those are also the only ones that I have 10 terabytes. Click Next. Here's why I want to give it a name. So I want to give this something creative, Death Star. Now let's look at the formatting again. Again, you can choose between these options. I'm going to select APFS. Yes, this is not a solid state drive. It is a hard drive, but I do believe APFS will be the best way to go. Once I've got that, now you want to adjust your chunk size. You're going to want to adjust your chunk size to kind of match the data that you're going to be trying to save. I do video quite a bit, so it's a large chunk size. So I go with 256. You can do 128 or 256, but I'll just do 256. Once you've made those selections, double check and just click Next. This is just letting you know that, hey, if there is anything on those disks, it's going to be erased and you cannot undo it. It's going to permanently erase it. So we're clicking Create, and now we got to let it do its thing. You'll start noticing it'll pull the two drives as it already did. And now it has successfully created the RAID. So we're going to go ahead and click Done. Now, in this RAID set, we have the Death Star. And the Death Star is made up of these two 10 terabyte drives which gives you 10 terabytes of total volume. Now, I also want to go ahead and create a RAID for those NVMe drives. So let's go back up here to File, RAID Assistant, and now is where we got to make a decision. I'm not going to mirror it because I have 3 drives. Since they're NVMe drives, they're built for speed, and I want to go ahead and take advantage of that speed. So let's go ahead and let's try striped. Now again, you can always go back and change these things. Just know if you do change how you have your RAIDs set up, you will essentially erase anything on those disks. So if you do decide to change things later, be sure you've backed up that data somewhere else. Let's go ahead and click on striped, click next, and there's where I got to be careful because I just want these 3. These are the 3 that I want. This one is not one that I put in the TerraMaster, and this is not one that I put in the TerraMaster. These are actually in a different video. We're going to go ahead and click next, and now we got to give this one a title. How about Coruscant? Again, I want to go APFS, and I'm selecting my chunk size as 256K. Next, the warning again about any data on there. Create. This one should go a little faster. And we're done. And you see Coruscant is now over here. So now we have Coruscant as a RAID made up of these 3 1 terabyte NVMe drives, 3.7 terabytes total. And now we have 2 RAIDs here. Okay, so now I'd like to go ahead and change the look of this. It's kind of dull. Let's give it something more reflective of the name. So I've already done a search to try to find a Death Star. I like this one here. I'm going to drag this to my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. Now I want to right click on this. Open. Now this opens in preview. So we want to right click on the image, open. And now we want to go to edit, select all, and copy image. Now, let's right click on Death Star, get info, move this out of the way, bring this down here, select this, and select up here where it says Death Star, and paste. And now we have a Death Star. But you know, suppose you don't like the way that looks. Well, we can always try to find another one. Let's see what we have here. I'm going to drag that. Looks very similar, but let's see if we get a different result. I'm going to minimize, open it, and I'm going to go to Edit, select all, go ahead and go to Edit, Copy. I'm going to move this, and let's right-click on Death Star, get info. Once again, we're going to click right up here, and select Edit, and Paste. And this looks much better. And there we go. That looks a lot better. And you can do the same for any of these. Now, let's get into some speed tests. We've got to remember, this is a DAS, not a NAS. This is connected to the computer with a USB 3.1 cable, I believe. I'll double check on that. But 10 megabits is the maximum speed. And of course, we're not going to see that. This is not super fast, but it is a good option for storage for your Mac. So let's see what we've got. We're going to try just a 1 gig transfer. I'm going to select the drive, and I want to go to Death Star. Open, and let's see what we've got. Again, we're not breaking any speed records, but this is going to the hard disks, which would be considered more of your cold storage. You wouldn't be accessing this often, just writing to it primarily. Okay, so let's see how the NVMEs turn out in our Coruscant RAID. Let's go ahead and stop this. We want Coruscant, open, and here we go. That's actually pretty good. So let's go ahead and stop this. Now let's talk about this just a little bit more. This is the D5 Hybrid from TerraMaster. I do think it's a good product and it has a place. It's a nice way of expanding your storage on a Mac. It does have the hot storage as well as the cold storage. The hot storage being your NVMe drives where the information can go back and forth fairly quickly. The cold storage, which you would save things that you don't access much, maybe your Time Machine backups or something like that, you just put on your regular hard disks. Just to kind of go over some of the things on the back of it, this is a USB 3.2 connection. Why this was not a Thunderbolt connection, I don't know. I guess they had to keep costs down somehow, but this really should have been a Thunderbolt 4 connection. Now, you do have this little section up here where you can configure a RAID. Now, I preferred to run it off of Disk Utility in macOS, but you can do it here. You do have those options. It does have a nice size cooling fan, and it does keep it nice and cool. Now, going back to this, it does say it has a 10 gigabit transfer bandwidth. Well, you saw the scores that we're getting here, so you don't need to go and spend a whole lot of money on an NVMe. Even if you get a very expensive one, you're never going to see the speed potential from those NVMEs because of how this is connected. I chose to use the Team Group MP33 1 terabyte NVMe, M.2 NVMe. These have read speeds of 1800 megabits or megabytes and 1500 megabytes for write. This is more than enough for what you're going to be able to utilize on the transfer rate, and the price is more affordable, so I just got 3 of those. Now for the hard drives, I just chose the Hitachi WD HGST HE10. It's a 10 terabyte drive, 7200 RPMs, 128 megabytes of cache, SATA 6. I chose the renewed ones. They're currently $79.98. I got them for $10 less. It was $69.98 at the time that I bought these. Now, these are renewed, so if you have vital information, you might not want to get the renewed ones. I'm not putting anything super critical on this, so these are fine. I've also had good luck with these in the past. So with that said, let's go over real quick how you can set it up for Time Machine. We want to go into our settings. There in General, select Time Machine. As you can see, my critical stuff is being backed up to a Synology NAS actually, but we can add more here obviously. So we're going to go ahead and click plus, enter credentials, and now we can see the drives that are available to us that we could set up for Time Machine. I want to use backups going to the cold storage. So essentially things that I don't need to access very often. So let's go with Death Star. Set up disk. Now here's where you can encrypt it, and all that means is you got to set up a password. You can put a hint if you want to, but you won't be able to access the drives without a password. For my purposes, it's just me here. I'm not encrypting it. Disk usage limit. This part's very important because the way Time Machine works, it's going to fill up your hard drive if it's allowed to. That's 10 terabytes. I can do other things with some of that space. I don't need 10 terabytes of Time Machine backups. So let's set a custom limit. Now, how do you know how much to use? A general rule of thumb is you want to have your backup space be twice the size of the space that is physically on your Mac or your computer. So mine is a 500 gig SSD built into my MacBook Pro. So that would mean I would go down to 1 terabyte. Well, I can do that. Just drag the slider over and get it to 1 terabyte. I would like to give it just a little more room, and it is a 10 terabyte drive. So let's go ahead. For my purposes, I'm going to select 2 terabytes. There we go. Then all I have to do is hit done. It's prepping it, and there it goes. Now, it's going to start its first backup in just under a minute. Do keep in mind the very first backup is going to take a while. After that, the backups are much faster. Let's take a look at something else. Options. This is where you can set the options on how often things are being backed up. What I don't like about Disk Utility is whatever options you select here will go for all of your backup destinations. So if I wanted one to say backup once a day and the other one once an hour, nope, can't do it. You select automatically every hour, it applies to both of them. So don't like that, but it is what it is. So here is where you can also select whether you want to back up if you're just running on battery power. That's going to be a personal decision. My MacBook is primarily plugged in almost all the time for my desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it on. It's never on backup power, and if it is, it's very short periods of time, so this is fine for me. Here is where you can exclude items from being backed up. So I don't want to back up these other drives, so they're excluded. You can go in and click this, and you can select other things that you would like to exclude if you would like. This is fine for me. Done, and as you see, it's starting its backup. It's calculating the time remaining, but again, the first one is going to take a while. And basically, that's how you would set up Time Machine to work with your DAS. And that's about it for this video. I do think the TerraMaster D5 Hybrid DAS is something that is worthwhile and has a place. For me, it provides additional redundancy. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and please like and subscribe because that really helps the channel. Thank you so much, and see you next time.